Hey guys, it's Matt. This is probably the most important video or presentation I've ever done, simply because with the way they have the pedal to the metal, we are running out of time. Not that the world's going to end or we buy any of these fear predictions coming through all these truth channels. No, but they have their pedal to the metal for a reason, and we have to get ourselves into a certain position. They would like nothing more than, as they transition into the next age, the next era, whatever they're trying to get through, the conjunction on the winter solstice, December 21st, the next eclipse, they would like nothing more than, as the cement hardens, we're still running around trying to point at police lineups, saying who done it, who's screwing us, doing the same who, what, when, where, and why. It's time for us to become something different, something completely immune, something where the yin and yang principles of what's going on here, we completely use everything that the reality is presenting to us, use it to become something better. It is time for that. There's no more reason to look at 9/11 South Tower videos or run around looking at this and pointing at that. It is actually time to start working daily to become a better person. And if the cement, to a degree, it's a little bit's going to harden on the winter solstice, or is going to harden at the next eclipse, we have to play it safe and assume it might harden a little bit as of the winter solstice. We have to get ourselves into a certain position or a state of being now. So this is, in my opinion, the highest evolution of mental attitude for this unique time in existence. Not in his story or history, in existence. This is one of the most unique times in physicality existence, in my opinion. It's time to leave the chase behind and to get ourselves in a certain state. Now, this presentation is rated just under R. It's not, there's some curses. I'll call it PG, not 13, PG 33. That's how we'll rate it, because there's a few incidents of strong language that just can't be helped. You try talking about Don Lemon without cursing. Go ahead. This is the most important final phase in our collective pursuit of truth. Star Trek delivered the most famous line in science fiction history: space, the final frontier. That was an inverted, in my opinion, hidden truth drop. The exact opposite is the final frontier, exploring inside ourselves. Kirk was a lying bastard. The entire show presents a fantasy that will never occur outside of an Elon Musk made-for-TV movie. Ha, ha, ha. People take a ship and explore the universe through outer space. Remember that interesting line from Poltergeist? One paranormal investigator says, outer space, and then the other immediately interrupts and says, inner space. Truth drop, perhaps. The final frontier? Inner space. Our friend TJ presented it best if you apply the yin to the yang principles. Reverse it. Space, the final frontier, should really be this slogan: inside, the last place anyone will ever look, because they've been bred, born, and raised to never look there by this sick system. We recently talked about what working on yourself means. At the very minimum, it's seeing what the beast society wants you to be and becoming something other than that. This presentation is about the ideal mental states that takes a lot of work, but if achieved, can overcome any negative headline the pathetic newsman could ever throw at us. Oh my God, they're going to lock us down again. Meat-packing plants are closing. So what? So what? Even if it is the end, which it isn't, buy into any of that fear. So even if the worst case scenario, you get yourself in a state and you say, so what? This place we're in, who knows what it is? To a certain subset, the shape of it is all that matters. I don't really care about the shape of it. This place that we're in is a crossroads domain where heaven and hell mix. No doubt about that. It's the crossroads. Heaven comes in over here, hell comes in over here. We all see as the hell has been winning for some time. The hell gets a lot of support, a lot of wind at its sails from these minion jerks running around. The hell's been winning. But tapping into the heaven is our own personal responsibility. It's here to tap into. There's no doubt about it. Now, Don Lemon will never show you those avenues, for the drooling minion knows them not himself. A slice of heaven to Don is finding the right greased-up hole in certain bar districts of Atlanta. I'm not even joking. My gay cousin has seen him out many, many times. At this point, we've been doing this so long, the truth evolution will be outlined now. The truth evolution is simple. Number one, something about the world isn't right. The Morpheus truth drop. It all hit us 5, 10, 15 years ago, and for the rare person here, many, many years before that. Something isn't quite right. Okay, that's step one. Number two, let me see who's screwing me. Let me find out who's screwing me and how they're screwing me. This is the endless animal farm that it wants you to stay on for the rest of your life. And it lays a lot of yellow breadcrumbs so you stay on this farm. Who's screwing me? Okay. Most people in the truth community will never evolve past this stage, and we've got up to 5 stages to go. We better get to 5. Anybody listening to this, we better get to 5 now. Okay, number 3. Well, okay, I see how they're screwing me. Who done it? Who's screwing me? Who did this? Who did that? Endless animal farm again, and more breadcrumbs, so the livestock on that animal farm stay quite satisfied. Number 4. Getting closer. There are things about reality itself that are responsible for kind of screwing us. What, in ways we can't really see or perceive, are they doing to a human being, and why? Okay, this is much higher level exploration. It's still, though, kind of an endless animal farm. It doesn't seem like a farm because it's such a high level philosophical pursuit. Things like, are they harvesting my energy? Interdimensional things, the Mandela effect, CERN, Geordie Rose's snow cone machine, all that stuff. Oh, we're getting close to truth here. I can remain here for the rest of my life. No, just because you can use the word metaphysical and you can throw that around every few sentences doesn't mean that we're still not on a high-level farm. Number 5, what do I need to do personally to step through the bars of the cage? Literally just walk out. What do I need to do personally to transcend while I'm here? That does not mean what some presentations are on YouTube, that you'll just all of a sudden become this being of light and transcend into another dimension. No, it's literally remaking yourself over, but if you look in the mirror, it's still you, but is it you? If you could see yourself in an energetic light. But it's not poof, new age poof, and you become a different thing. I'm not talking about that at all. But I'm still talking about a complete makeover of what you thought you were just 10 or 15 years ago. A proper energetic being here, becoming the proper energetic being that will carry through the day and the moment of your death, will carry through. And what I'm starting to call the moment of my death, no, that's the moment of my life. On the moment of my life, or on the day of my life, which is some people would call the day of their death, I want a big green casket with Kermit the Frog's head right over where my head would be in the casket so people can cry and sob over that. We finally understand what all these endless animal farms are for, to keep you in this pen, then you move on to that pen, and then you graduate up to that pen. It's so you never truly understand yourself and transform your energetic self into something you take through the day of your life. It's not human. It's not possible with regular men and women, the number of farms and traps that this reality has created for what we'll call a real human being. And then you finally see how hardcore the things that are going on here, how it's so far beyond what regular men and women could pull off, some Tavistock Institute could pull off, just shuffling papers around. There's so far beyond what anything normal could pull off. Then you say there's some real hardcore spiritual battle shit going on here. And you finally start to understand what that means about who you really are. So using the tools that this world affords to literally become something else, that's what we're here to do. It's obvious what we're here to do. To use all the tools, including the assholes being assholes, is actually a tool you can use. But to use all the tools to become something else starts with where your mind is. Consciousness attached through the tether to brain is mind, in general, is mind. So getting your mind in the right place is not the final step. I presented it as number 5, but it's actually the first step where we need to do the work to actually become or transform ourselves. So we have to start with the absolute basics. As usual, Anybody, No Child Left Behind here, wants to understand the absolute basics. No Child Left Behind actually means the smartest ones are not allowed to get ahead. And the smartest one has to be pulled back into the class with the dumbest of the dumb in that George Bush system. But let's just start with the basics. No spiritual child left behind. What does it, whatever the creepy it is, what does it want you to believe about yourself and your place in this world? I'm not going to spend much time here. These answers are obvious to all of us at this point, but let's just outline the main points so we can build from here. This lifetime, according to it, the dark figure, whatever the thing is that stands behind the screen, presenting all of its lies and all its manipulation all around us and all of its influences, it just says to us, this lifetime is all important. It's so important. And for many, it's all there is. You've got to put 100% of everything into the successful merits of this lifetime. So how much do authority, political leaders, how much do people on TV, these talking heads, how much do they ever talk about spiritual aspects of being, which by definition implies you are more than this lifetime? Arrogant pricks like Don Lemon never mention that sort of stuff, do they? Never, ever mention it. That's what gives the bastards away. They don't even bring somebody on their television show and then take the other side, arguing that you're just dirt. They don't bring anybody on to talk about it at all. They don't ever mention it. They bury the topic that you could be an aspect of something spiritual that's not here. They don't talk about it, and they bury it like it doesn't even exist. Number two, this system and its minions breeds dependence, and it breeds learned helplessness in people from birth. When you want to know something, just ask the little shitty little device in front of you, an Alexa or Echo, and it'll tell you what's what. It will tell you the answer that you must regurgitate. If you want to stay on your own property, you must work to pay a central authority a tax to stay on your own land. If you want to be an interior decorator in about 10 states, you need to petition a central authority before you may tell your client what color curtains to hang. Now, this list could go on for hundreds of pages. We've been there, done that. This is the end. We don't need to revisit that. Just a basic understanding to build on. We know the pathetic mental state that this thing wants all of us in and how it uses its minions so real people produce the energy, the negative energy that it feeds upon, literally. It's a chocolate factory of turning real hobbits into golems. That's all we need to understand about it. We move on. In finding and discovering our own best mental states that we can transform ourselves, build upon to transform ourselves, let's just start the same way we've done many times in trying to beat back this not milk, by looking at the opposite of what the minions on behalf of the screen want us to feel, think, and act. It wants us to feel, think, and act a certain way. Oh, just do the opposite. Always the best place to start. When we take the time to follow this trail as far as we possibly can, some amazing things start to emerge. No matter how bad the circumstances, it's up to us to determine how we see a thing. It's always up to us. Not many people really understand that because it's been bred out of them. No, the newsmen will tell you how you see a thing. It's not up to me. I know there are a few exceptions to this, but if something's 99% true, I'm allowed to make a broad brush declaration like I am now. It's up to us. Now, I admit also, if a bear is ripping off your arm, like that tender, gentle scene in The Revenant with DiCaprio and his electric car, if that's playing out and the bear's ripping your spine out, I agree some things is not really up to us, how we see everything. But for the most part, this is true. The movie Life is Beautiful, some sort of truth drop in this area. The father, it's 20-some years old, the father convinces his little kid that the concentration camp, inside the concentration camp, is actually a big game. They're playing a game, and it's actually fun. If he just can shield the kid from seeing death. It's in some respects, it's a truth drop. We all have the ability to see almost everything in this positive sense, and we better start doing it now. Not just to fool ourselves so we can hide from the fear. No. This is about literal transformation of who you are. Plato wrote a paper called On Happiness. Basically said every little tiny micro decision everybody makes at all times during the day is to bring on happiness. Right down to the most minorest of decisions. And another way to ensure happiness is to push away pain or reduce pain. Okay. But happiness can only come from one place. It can only come from a certain state of mind. Now, this is the most fundamental understanding of being a human in this experience, that the state of mind is everything. And that's not even the right words. How do you stress that further? It's everything. Now, how many times has this notion ever been mentioned in school? How many times has anybody ever talked about it in government public education? Perhaps never. Telling a child that the state of mind is everything. There should be a whole second grade through fifth grade should be no other subject. Studying dates of when Napoleon crossed a certain border. Screw that little bastard with his hand hidden in his jacket, the other hand down his pants. Who cares when Napoleon crossed a certain border? I mean, K through 12 school does not spend one day teaching us as children techniques to achieve the correct mindset in which to move through life to spiritually progress. That gives the fraud of government education away right there. In my high school, there was an actual class where you had to carry around an egg all day without breaking it. I guess the egg represented a baby. You're supposed to be its father. That's the highest level of child rearing advice from public high schools. If you have a child, it's okay, just don't break it. And forget evolving the spiritual mind or those types of connections, just the happiness state of mind, that mental skill is very, very hard for all of us to do because we were never taught how to control our thoughts and emotions as a child, to create happiness or bliss. Never taught it. It was never mentioned. Just when Napoleon crossed a border. All that other nonsense you learn in high school. Your parents didn't really touch on it either because they were taught methods and techniques from theirs and so on and so on and so on, hidden a long time ago. You were never told that all of this is up to you. A news story comes on TV and you're told by some plastic asshole how to feel about the story. Have you ever noticed that your local news anchors can be so solemn and so somber after a local story about a school bus accident where little children were killed, and it looks like that news anchor is going to shed a tear, and then like 1 minute later when here's Bob with sports, and they start laughing and all this stuff. Well, wait a second. Then you were acting. Give me a break. He'll be cracking jokes with the sports guy, but he was ready just 40 seconds before because of the school bus accident, was ready to shed a tear. What frauds. Proves he never gave a shit at all about the school bus crash, unless he had stock in the company. As children, our mental state was screwed with to carry forth a permanent state of fear, tension, and anxiety right into our adulthood. And according to the system of lies, what mental state will get rid of all that? Will make all your worries go away? Only one that comes from looking down at big numbers associated with a big fat bank account, or maybe just getting a new cigarette speedboat or a brand new Porsche, Ferrari or something. Oh, if you have the right money and success, all your worries and troubles goes away. That's what it tells you. That's what most people are convinced of. Find the right mental state through buying shit. Incredibly, it's all K through 12 supports. Not only does school not mention, basically the only thing that's important, that you are likely just an aspect of something that's timeless, that's not here, that every bit of stock and anxiety and worry should not be all about what this world thinks of you. It doesn't mention any of that. In fact, it goes the opposite. It does the opposite to screw you over. It uses the Bill Gates inverted approach. I remember in junior high being told that we had to watch something on television that was coming on. It was about a nuclear winter, or what would happen after a nuclear war, called The Day After from the 80s. You remember this? Well, anybody over 45 remember The Day After, how big of a deal that was? It was like part of class. We had to watch it. That's what K through 12 was pushing. That was really good for my mental development to be terrified of a nuclear winter. The generation before me, well, it was worse. They hid under desks thinking the bombs were actually going to fall soon. Wow. What incredibly strong desks they must have been. Probably some fine print right under the desk with a sticker that says the model number, and it says able to withstand up to 5 kilotons if the child hiding under it is over 50 pounds. The 3 pigs should have made their homes out of the material that those desks were made out of, and the wolf would basically he'd be impotent trying to blow them over. Yeah, society breeds a really normal and natural mental state in children. A loved one dies, and you, as a child, look around at everybody sobbing, and you see how horrible what just happened to Uncle Jack. Oh, it's so horrible, death. Oh, we're going to do anything in our power to avoid death. We want to attach and root to this world. Ray Kurzweil talks about putting our consciousness into a computer, and that sounds mighty fine. Then we'll never have to leave this world. Society dictates our behavior in the wrong way in every single area. What 10-year-old boy would be big enough and confident enough and capable of seeing the other side of things? At the funeral, pointing at the casket from the crowd and proclaiming, "Uncle Jack's one lucky bastard! That fuck's out of here!" This kid would suggest that his death should actually be celebrated, like all the ancients that really knew what was up. Death should be celebrated, the passing on, becoming something better. But the kid in this society would be put into a mental institution for doing that at a funeral. So we've talked about seeing what it wants, then doing the opposite, or carrying that forth in other ways, not just doing the opposite, feeling the opposite, reacting the opposite, putting yourself in a mental state. That's the opposite. And this is a powerful thing. You need to make sure you apply this many times a day, all day long. Now, I'll share with you the two techniques that I have adopted for myself, that I still have a long way to go. I'm just getting into this. I can tell you what to do many times without practicing it properly myself. There's no doubt I have not mastered this, but I've got a sense of it from time to time as to what works, and I'm going to keep doing this. I adopted these techniques for myself that correspond to defying what the soul-sucking system wants me to be in the most important area in my mental state or our mental state. All right? Now, the mental state we are in either feeds it or denies it energy. It's that simple. Most people are born, they go through the K through 12 school system, and they are spit out the other side of the chocolate factory for one reason: to feed it the energy that it wants. Now, there are many ways to hone our mental state to starve the beast of energy, to tap into the heaven here, and to tap into a state of bliss, which, in my opinion, is always right in front of all of us. It's always right in front of all of us. We just have to reach out and embrace it or step into it. It's always there unless we're reenacting the scene from The Revenant. The first technique is fun and more simple to execute. However, it takes many weeks of practice before you can even begin to convince yourself that certain states of mind that can rise above this madness out our window, you have to be able to convince yourself of it, because you will have aspects, little moments of rising above. Then you'll fall back down. Have little moments. But even if you have the first moment, you'll know it's possible and to actually evolve the state of being into your everyday life. And again, I have a lot of work to do. I'll call it emotional time travel. All right? This is a technique. The concept and outcome is kind of the same as what happened to Scrooge at the end of A Christmas Carol. Okay? What happened to Scrooge at the end of A Christmas Carol? One of the most massive truth drop movies ever, A Christmas Carol. The main theme is finding a completely new perspective on the world. Nothing out Scrooge's window changed. Okay? Still the same assholes and MPs and parliament and people and the nasty things on the street and Jack the Rippers and pickpockets but nothing. The only thing changed was his perspective. You don't need to go through, though, what Ebenezer went through. That rich, greedy bastard was put through by those three sons of bitches spirits. They were nasty SOBs, what they put old Ebenezer through that night. It was a night of hell on that poor devil. The last one even showed him his own grave after she screeched at his old broken down ass. Everybody here knows they're an aspect of something that's timeless, that always has been, always will be. So don't worry about my example. It's just the best way to put yourself into this state. But I call it, pretend you are dead. Literally pretend you are dead. Okay? In any routine thing you are doing during the course of the day, any routine drudgery, imagine what it would be like to experience that same thing that you're complaining about if you were dead and were able to come back for one day to experience what, for example, you did last Wednesday, one final time. Think the experience would be different with that mindset? It would be like Scrooge waking up the next day on steroids. You may be driving to the grocery store now, driving to Whole Foods, to buy items to make dinner for your family. Now, you and most people would find no reason to love this boring drudgery. You drive out of the neighborhood, not noticing the leaves have turned a beautiful red and orange. The clouds are beautiful, billowy, with crystal clear blue between the clouds, and that's a rare situation anymore, but you don't notice. You don't notice a damn thing. Just rushing off to Whole Foods to get what you need to get done, cross things off your list. On any given day, most people simply go through the motions and make the 5-mile-long drive to Whole Foods like it's another turn of Conan's Wheel of Pain. As you start the car, you just hope you left a decent CD in the stereo to pass the time with. Focus on how much time you need to give yourself there before you need to pick up your youngest kid on the other side of town. A man blows an intersection, blows right through the red light, and as you honk the horn and beep at him, he flips you off the finger. There's some snarled look on his face. He acts like he wants to pull his car over and fight you. The experience of that day, just your regular life drudgery, it's barely a 1 out of 10 on the pleasure meter. But most days are like this for most people. But what if you were dead, having died, though, many years in the future at a nice old age? But here's what happened. Something you didn't expect at death. The moment of death, some entity swoops in and sits you down for a long talk. It tells you how things in existence work for your particular species. You didn't know you were this species. It informs you that your race of beings floats around in a mist for all of eternity. And only one time every 10,000 years do you get to inhabit an avatar or inhabit a body and live a lifetime on the earthly plane. Just one lifetime every 10,000 years. The life you just left because you just died a minute ago. Now, this news is devastating. 10,000 years of nothing before I can experience another roller coaster or a lick of an ice cream cone? The entity tells you how to prepare yourself for your 10 millennia of mist. And you've done it many times in the past, too. However, it has a treat for you, a special treat. So you have something to look forward to while floating around in the mist. It says every 1,000 years we will let you go back and experience a day in your life as it just occurred. The day will be random, but the circumstances will be just as they were on that day in your life, one of thousands that you just blew off as random, as you thought was your routine drudgery. Unlike everyone else who enters there with a mind wipe, though, on this special day, once every 1,000 years when we send you back, you will have full perspective of who you are now and who you were. You will not have the mind wipe. Whatever it will be after 1,000 years of floating in the mist, you will carry that with you. You'll have full situational awareness and spend 24 hours on the earthly plane. And then the following day, you must return to the mist for your next iteration of 1,000 years. 100 years go by in the mist, 200 years go by in the mist, 400, 500, 600, 800, 900, 950 years in the mist, and you're starting to get excited. Just 50 more years in the mist, and you get to go experience some random day of Earth. Boy, I hope it was that high school dance I experienced where I hooked up with that cheerleader. It was the only decent girl I ever got in high school. You just 50 years out, you start to think about it already. Okay, this one day, you got 9,000 more years to go. And finally, the time comes, and boom, you find yourself re-experiencing that one random day, one day of your life on the earthly plane. But there it is again, that same day about to pull out in your driveway on the way to Whole Foods. You remember it well, okay? It was a day in 2020. We're going to Whole Foods to get dinner for the family. Now, the circumstances on the ground are exactly the same as they were on that day in your real life, in the past. But what's different is your whole mental state of how you're going to look at the circumstances, how you're going to relive these 24 hours. How does the day look now? You just did 1,000 years in the mist. What would be your mindset as you sit in the car, realizing you're about to drive to Whole Foods? Would the car ride be boring drudgery from that perspective? Would you think what is happening to you potentially is the best thing that ever happened to any entity in the whole world? Yeah, you would think it's pretty special. The place you begged to get out of while you were alive now looks really good. This time, you would not only notice the vivid colors of the turning maple leaf trees, you'd pull the car over and you'd get out. You'd walk up to them and you'd touch the leaves in wonder, not having seen one or felt one for 1,000 years. As you got back into the car, everything in that day would be incredible. You almost hit a mailbox as you drive around the corner because you're looking up at the clouds. You're fixed on these amazing billowy clouds in the blue sky. You almost ran down a mailman. That same man runs the red light, and as he looks over at you, expecting you to have a violent road rage response, you just smile and laugh. The man is very confused and drives off to pick a road rage fight with someone else. A BLM protest has stopped traffic. You don't remember that happening, but yeah, it did. A BLM protest has stopped traffic in all 4 directions at your main street. But things are going so wonderfully for you, and you're so happy to be back, just one day re-experiencing what life was, you desperately want to get out of their car and hug all the BLM members as they march up the street. You'd arrive at your destination, walk into the Whole Foods, and you'd be in absolute astonishment as to how many incredible foods are being offered. You'd even be amazed at your own body, pulling your fingers in and letting your fingers out and making funny shapes with your fingers like Spock's Live Long and Prosper, as people coming down the aisle next to you think you're absolutely nuts. You wonder if you'll be able to see your daughter as you think. You remember seeing her that day, a teenager, but you remember on that real day in your life, you were pissed off at her. Pissed off because she lied about her SAT scores and you weren't talking to her for days. You were told the day would play out just as it did, so you remember she'll be home shortly after dinner. She'll be quite confused how your ire towards the whole SAT thing has now vanished, and you're very, very happy to see her all of a sudden. Okay, this could go on. This is one of many, many, many techniques to put yourself into a certain state of mind. You want to do it, whatever works for you, other techniques will follow. Do it as much as you can all day long. It's completely up to you how you see the world. I've experienced bits and pieces of this, and I will continue to keep working on it. Okay, but what if it was just described? What if it really happened? Again, we're talking about CV, what's on the news, the election. You wouldn't give a shit about who's wearing masks or you wouldn't give a shit if you were back one day every 1,000 days. You wouldn't care what these assholes are doing to the world right now. Is there any chance this would happen? You float in the mist for 1,000 years. You come back into this random day, and you're like, oh, my God. Oh, my God. I'm back in 2020 in this horrible CV thing? How horrible. I want my metaphysical money back. You're going to break down and cry that this is the one day you get to re-experience? Of course not. You wouldn't care. It would be as wondrous as any other day. Just taking it in from this certain new perspective. Scrooge coming out of the experience with the 3 spirits. You wouldn't run out in the street like, oh yeah, it's tax day tomorrow. Everything that happened to me the night before, that's all worthless. You wouldn't give a shit about Joe Biden on TV or an election or a virus or a stock market crash. Your mindset is up to you. You are allowed to have this mindset every day of your life. If you don't like my fictitious scenario, it doesn't work for you, then there's a lot of other things you can do, hundreds and hundreds to play the same game. If you don't like my time travel, return from the dead, mist, then play this. Quote, who would appreciate this current situation I'm in right now? Who would appreciate this the most in the world? I've done this many times myself without really even realizing what I was doing or why I was doing it. So even without the game or thinking of it in this way, I personally, here's one that I do. I can never get over the amount of fresh and prepared food offered by a grocery store chain around here called Wegmans. All right? I still am amazed by it. I don't go in very often. But I've played this game without even knowing what I was doing. As I go up and down the first few aisles, it's like endless prepared foods. Piles of wings and meats and cheeses and cakes. And here's a row of Italian food and a row of Indian food, all pre-prepared. They have hot stuff, a soup bar. It's just mind-boggling. And we've been living in, quote, the West our whole lives. Now, many times I've said, what the heck would a starving family in Somalia think about this? All right. What would they think about such a thing? Walking through these endless prepared foods. I'm not talking about cans of Chef Boyardee. I'm talking about hot, steamy mac and cheese, stuff that's ready to go. What would they think about this? Would they even believe you if you told them that this existed? Back, the watering hole is gone dry in some remote part of Somalia or Rwanda, and they're worried about getting water, and they wouldn't even believe you. So although sympathizing with a Somalian is very human and is sad, okay, because they've been in this situation many, many times. The West is intent. The creepy powers that be is intent on keeping Africa in this state. That's not the purpose here, okay? That's not the point of this game to get down. It's to put you, again, remember, in the most positive mental state imaginable, where you literally have the power to make life a daily wonder. Now, the key to all this is finding a way to forever carry gratitude and appreciation. Remember, coming in the segment, it said, who would appreciate this the most in the world? Okay, the aisle at Wegmans grocery store. Who would appreciate this more than anyone in the world? Some starving family in Rwanda or Somalia. And then to take that and to put it into your own self is as gratitude and appreciation. Become Scrooge at the end of A Christmas Carol, waking up the next morning. And the way the reality works, whatever you grasp that, whenever you take that in, it will just put you back into your daily routine, the daily grind, the drudgery, and it will fade away. And you have to, when you grab onto it and you really find that incredible, blissful gratitude and appreciation, this reality will take it from you. You have to hold on to it and foster it and nurture it and carry it around like that egg in my high school. Don't drop it. So next Tuesday, as you rush into Wegmans and you're a bit wet from the drizzle outside and you're pissed off because you have no time to get all your daily tasks done, can you remind yourself that you can completely change your state of mind if you choose to do that? By asking, what person in the world would appreciate this situation the most? And can I recreate that level of appreciation in myself right now? You can learn to do this all the time. You can do it every damn time you enter a 7-Eleven, something completely trivial. Compare your current situation to what all the poor devils who have ever lived in the past had to contend with. Do you know how remarkable it is to even walk into a 7-Eleven, a store that has so many choices, compared to some guy, like what did Matt Damon say in True Grit? He was lapping at the hoof print that contained a little muddy water, and he was happy to have it. He had the calic, remember? But people in the past, they had it rough in many areas. Just walking into a 7-Eleven is charmed life if you choose to see it that way. Of course, anybody screaming at me, all the negatives, that's not the point here. Not the point. Sure, I know the donuts in the 7-Eleven are loaded up with dye number 666. I know that. Who are you talking to here? That's not the point here. I know the money you pay 7-Eleven will feed the creeps behind the big corporations and fund their perverted reindeer games that will happen at the Grove. I know all that. You understand the point I'm making here. Penn, see how you can. There's two sides of the coin as to how you want to see this. Look, the 7-Eleven is unavoidable for most people. A certain state of affairs exists here in the United States, exists here in the West. People have responsibilities that they just simply can't walk out of. Most people, will need to keep paying the bills. They will probably need to keep eating processed craft foods. Some people, congratulations, slowly, if they can get it done, we admire them. Over a 20-year period, potentially, could go off-grid, become a subsistence farmer. They could do hydroponics and all that. That's wonderful, and people should be able to shoot for that. But most of us, it is what it is at this point. We'll never be able to check our bodies out of this beast society that we find ourselves in. Okay? It's the mind that attached to spirit that can check out. Okay? We're not going to be able to leave the main shit show, most of us here, with a little natural hydroponic colony that's off-grid. That's not doable for most people. I have 4 cats and I feel like I have responsibilities. Imagine people have children. We have to make the most of the situation, most importantly, mentally, emotionally, and that leads to spiritually. Like what was it, Samurai Master Katsumoto said in the Tom Cruise movie, The Last Samurai. By the way, very positive, uplifting, Dances with Wolves type movie. that don't know how it came out of the system, but the system must produce good every so often for reasons we'll discuss in the future. The Last Samurai, Master Katsumoto, Samurai Katsumoto, tells Tom Cruise something about not trying to escape through the snowy passes. He says, until that time, you are here. I didn't say that too good, but say we are here. We're here. We never maybe will leave the United States again. Katsumoto basically meant the same thing. Make the best of it, Captain Ogren. Captain Ogren. That was Tom Cruise. And you know what? He did make the best of it. He absolutely transformed himself physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. That's what's so amazing about that movie, The Last Samurai. Tom Cruise did it. He got tired of feeling sorry for himself. Craving he cries out as an alcoholic in the middle of the night, sake, sake. He gets tired of he just looked himself in the mirror and he says, I'm tired of it. He made a sudden change in mindset and everything for him changed in that movie. He went from a pissed off alcoholic stuck in a Japanese village in 1800 and whatever to a man who began to love the people around him, to appreciate and love the culture, especially as he compared that culture to a Western culture that looked very vile and poisonous to him in comparison. This movie, again, is similar to Dance with Wolves. Very, very positive. As he's making the change, Tom Cruise leaves his old, it's a symbolic gesture, leaves his Western clothes behind, leaves his uniform behind in favor of the traditional Japanese, I don't know what you call it. It looks like a dress, but I don't know what it is. But I'm just saying that because Tom Cruise mocks his guards in the Japanese village. He says, you're probably pissed off because you have to wear a dress all the time. And then he completely changes his mindset and he chooses that garb for himself. John Dunbar with Dance with Wolves did something similar with the Sioux Indians. The kid in the Dead Poet Society did it too, to a different degree, when he demanded to be called Nuwanda. It's checking out of the current system and doing it on your own, not asking permission to do it. So what will you do to leave the brainwashed, helpless complainer in all of us behind? All of us. It's something we'll never, a shadow self, a brainless, brainwashed, helpless complainer. We just have to get rid of that person inside all of us and become something that has tremendous appreciation and gratitude for whatever circumstance we find ourselves in. A personal situation comes to mind, something that a person doing the exact opposite of anything suggested here, doing exactly and becoming the exact person that this sick beast system would want them to become. About 15 years ago in California, there was a woman yelling at this Pakistani, I don't think it was Indian, Pakistani, I believe, gasoline attendant. I don't know where it was, right? The price of gas in California had pushed over $4 a gallon. Okay, that happens every so often out there. I haven't been out there for a long time. But she's basically yelling at the guy that works there. Guess what she was driving? A gigantic Cadillac Escalade. Now, you talk about failing the life test and not getting it and not using this world and not using any of its wondrous tools to better yourself and just becoming a pissed off minion of the system. That is exactly what this woman was. Of course, we all have a million of these examples. You can play the general appreciation and gratitude game 100 different ways a day. Find what works for you in order to immediately link to a new state of perception, even a literally blissful one. I've found that from time to time it goes away, but I'm going to keep working on it. It can be done almost at every moment. Of course, that is very unrealistic. There are limitations to being this avatar. We need to shoot for the highest state of being. We can. If we get halfway, that's pretty good. And when you jog up the driveway to get some mail, just jog up the driveway to get some mail. Just realize there's about 10 million people in the world without the use of one or both legs, that they would give about anything to be able to do something as menial as just jogging to the mailbox. You can do this all day long, play these sort of games. Person listening to this that doesn't have use of one or both legs, well, what do you have? Complete clarity and state of mind? That is all that's necessary to work on spiritual connection, to actually use this reality, this lifetime for what it's for. You have the most important part. or the only important part. So, yeah, we all want to be able to jog up the driveway, but what do you have? This is a 2-second train stop anyway. Two blinks, 2 shakes of a whatever. We're all dead anyway. We all worry about this lifetime. It's over before it begun. Time doesn't exist. We'll be dead before we know it. So what? It's not some negative thing. It's a positive thing. The day of my death? No, the day of my life. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? You don't like these games? Here's a related game. I love this one. Call it the King game. The King game. And you do it every time you take a shower. Play the King game. It's good to be the king. Yeah, something as simple as a shower. Many people still generally enjoy their shower. Well, sometimes if they're not thinking about all the things they're going to need to do at work and all the ways they're going to have to be rushing around all day long and focusing on what they're already late for, if they can clear their mind of all that, then once a year they can kind of appreciate their shower. It's up to you, but you can actually make taking a shower one of the greatest things that anyone in human history has ever experienced in a lifetime. And you can do all of this even without taking soap to your penis, if you're a man. How many people have ever thought about this before getting into their hot, steamy shower with their nice Home Depot tile, different patterns and colors and grout selections? About 80% of the people who have ever lived on this earth, 80% or so who have ever lived, have never experienced a nice hot shower. Think about how many poor bastards that is. Billions and billions. Know this. 99% of kings, queens, and emperors who have ever lived have not experienced a hot shower on a cold day. 99% of kings and queens. Think about it. There are many ways you are living right now far superior to almost every king who has ever lived. That is, unless, just grabbing a winch and dipping your wick in a strange woman every single day that those kings did. That's all that matters to you. If that's all that matters to you, then those kings live better than you do. But that ain't shit. Heck, most of those guys, they did so much of that they eventually caught something, or they went crazy, or it just fell off one day while they were taking a piss. Check that scene in Kevin Costner's Robin Hood. Remember Sheriff of Nottingham, Professor Snape? He's got that young girl up in there atop that castle. His orgasm only lasts a few seconds. I assure you, the cold and damp that pervades that horrible, dark, cold castle, that lasts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for about 8 months. That Snape, Sheriff of Nottingham, he don't have no hot shower to get under. You live a charmed life compared to Nottingham, Sheriff of Nottingham, kings, queens, Kubla Khan freezing his ass off in those tents. You got to realize that when you step into the shower, boy. So is life really that horrible? Cheer up. If you can take a shower, you surpass all the kings in history. How's that for a new level of appreciation? That bastard King George III, he never got warm. His whole life he never got warm. Watch Vince Vaughn in The Wedding Crashers to see what too much sex does for you. It gets old real quick. How many people, as they step into the shower, say, I'm about to do something that almost every king who has ever lived has not done? The mental state of appreciation and gratitude in everything is up to you. Now, you can play the king game and find this type of appreciation in 100 different ways, well beyond the shower. You have a kiwi fruit, not the New Zealander, a fruit, sitting on your kitchen counter next to like a rotten banana, then realize this. There ain't a king, queen, emperor, sultan, or khan pretty much anywhere who's ever lived that had the pleasure of tasting that. And there are other thousands of other foods those kings and sultans and Kubla Khans have never tasted. Kubla Khan would have killed Genghis Khan over a Hershey bar if he ever tasted how good one tastes. He would have offered you Marco Polo as your personal slave if you had another Hershey bar, your last one you could give him. Some people like to enjoy a little wine with their steak or their imported Alaskan king crab legs. Again, you can get that. Most kings have probably never tasted that. They like to enjoy a little wine. Do you realize, people, just from the alcohol perspective alone, people like screaming at their computer how horrible it is to enjoy a glass of wine once in a while. How the grog, the absolute shit grog that these kings even had to drink, that was their mead, You know how they put the barley in the mash. It was basically they were just drinking basically piss to get drunk. The wine, horrible things just floating around in it, bugs. They didn't have any good. But you have these Napa and Sonoma wines today. I mean, you give that to a king, he wouldn't even know. It would be like some sort of ambrosia, like Zeus himself pissed it out. But I'm not just saying alcohol. All these different areas, mask or no mask out our window, we still have to appreciate the charmed life we live versus basically every other poor devil that ever walked this earth. Maybe that's a giant part of the life test. Even if you're a judge over yourself or your higher self is a judge of yourself. Basically, okay, finally used the tools of this reality for what they're meant to be used for. Finally put themselves into a state of appreciation. So no matter how effed up we made it out the window, they still found the best in everything. Okay, pass. Don't come back. Go pass go. Don't collect your $200. Just leave the entire board. Leave the entire board. Found the good in everything, found the gratitude and appreciation in everything. That's why we make it more and more and more effed up out our window. Can the person hold on to the appreciation and the gratitude? Oh, they did? Oh, that's a major life test passed. Go ahead, get out of here. Don't go around the Monopoly board anymore. Thanks for coming. As usual, I often have a hard time practicing what I preach. Or I'll know the path. I can talk about it. I can sense it. It resonates with everything inside me, my tuner fork, but can I walk it? That I still struggle with in a lot of different areas, especially in this area. So regarding this wonderful mental state, I normally don't have it. I'm a grumpy, negative bastard most of the time. However, I have experienced these things many times, a glimpse of it on a certain afternoon. I just can't hold on to it. Whatever this bliss that I've experienced, I can't hold on to it, but I know it can be achieved. And if it can be achieved once, then it can be achieved for a longer period of time. It's things we can work on. I've gotten tastes and glimpses of what these mental states are all about. Now, I've really improved, as all of us have improved over the last year. All of us have. Leaps and bounds we've come, because I truly believe in this yin and yang principle regarding if they're going to try to take so much from us, regarding the CV thing, of course, right now, they're going to take that big of a bite of the shit sandwich. I know and I expect to be given mental and spiritual rewards for all they are taking. If they are going to take in conjunction with potentially the reality itself, then I expect rewards. Expect some Bob Barker's new car? A new car! No, I expect spiritual insight, a mental state of being, a progression of where a human being's supposed to go. I expect those rewards because per the yin and yang, it has to deliver it. And it's delivering it. I mean, think of this, just this type of conversation we're having so far past what happened to the South Tower and all. We've come so far. Even if I'm not saying we have everything right now, but we've definitely come a long way. Virginia Slim's baby. All right. So we're all improving tremendously in these areas. I had to rake wet leaves the other day. Normally, I don't like doing it at all. But that day, I hoped it would never end. Now, I don't believe the reason for that is some people might suspect that this is the last time I'll do it. And I sense that, like all these fear truth channels are saying we're all going to die and it's the end of the world. And Matt, you sense that. You sense the mud flood's coming and you don't have much time left. No, I don't think that's why I was doing it at all. I'm not just trying to put my head in the sand. This is the technique that I use, some of the things that I've been talking about here. I reject the end of the world truth channels. Not hiding my head in the sand or wishful thinking that I reject all this end of the world prophecy, prediction, and all this bullcrap. What's the track record on the end of the world group? What's their track record? They got it wrong every single time? Yeah. Every a-hole other than, say, Noah. Anybody other than Noah who predicted the end or whatever, they got it wrong. Noah's the only one who got it right. They all got it wrong, every damn one. So what kind of fool would adopt something that's been wrong every single time since Noah? Okay? If that's the case, I got a bridge deal for you. Real cheap. I don't think that will be the last time I rake leaves, and that's why I appreciated it so much because, again, some horrible cataclysm is coming. I don't think that's going to happen, anything because of the current situation or what they're going to do to us. But I do find it easier and easier to convince myself. See, that's the difference. To convince myself it may be the last time. See the difference? And then the experience becomes a beautiful thing. There's a difference between manifesting and believing the end is coming and actually getting into a state of mind that knows it's not the end, but saying, I want to experience what this would be like if it were the last time I ever do it. See the difference? How would you eat a chocolate bar, for example, if it was literally, not that you were going to die on your last bite, but it was the last chocolate bar on earth? How would you eat that chocolate bar? The same way? Of course not. That's what I'm talking about. Brad Pitt's steroided up presentation in the movie Troy was a truth drop. He was Achilles. Okay, it doesn't mean I believe in Achilles' gods, Apollo, Hera, and the rest of the Greek pantheon. Pantheon of gods, right? The principle was a truth drop. He told, was Prosecco's? Call her Prosecco. He told that woman, Prosecco, Bill Clinton called her that woman. I'm going to say this once about Miss Lewinsky, that woman. He told Prosecco that the gods envy us. He said, when you're mortal, everything is more beautiful. Doesn't sound like Brad Pitt, but the gods envy us, he says. When you're mortal, everything is more beautiful. So why don't we take that advice and make it more beautiful? What has society told us to do? The opposite. It's horrible drudgery. People's lives are miserable. You know, it could have been a truth drop on many levels, what Brad Pitt said in that as Achilles. He's saying they, the gods, envy us because of they're immortal versus we are mortal. But here's another way of looking at it. The doomed minion creatures of this realm, the George Bush creatures, they probably know they're immortal, yet they, you know, like the Coven or the Masters of the Coven, the vampire movie Underworld, where they just leapfrog through time. They don't go into different bodies, but they go to sleep, then they come back. They go to sleep, they come back. They go into a incarnation as Chelsea Clinton. They come back as another form of a politician. They just leapfrog potentially. Many smart people believe that the minions here, or the sequential incarnations, just are here, and they come back with full understanding of who they are, retain memory, things like that. So the doomed minion creatures may know they are immortal, yet they probably also know they're somehow bound to this place, experiencing lifetime after lifetime, as history repeats itself with tiny little variations of the same pathetic story. You know, isn't it interesting how many times, quote, being immortal is presented in art and in movies as something that is a curse or a doom? How many presentations and stories about a creature that wants to die, that can't die? You know, is that Achilles? The gods envy us. The minion creatures here envy us. Potentially. Star Trek Voyager, watched that episode, the end of season 2 recently, where the Q, not the Q you know, but there's another Q that just wants to die. And they won't let him die. They imprison him inside of a comet for all of eternity because the Q in Star Trek are these basically like godlike beings. They snap their fingers and can get or do whatever they want. And one of them actually wanted to die. And they didn't understand the concept. You want to die? They're immortal beings. So he was doomed. His immortality was a curse to him. He presents it in the Star Trek Voyager. My immortality, he says, if I had a dread disease and was suffering, you would allow me to end my own life. I guess Janeway, the captain, was arbitrator over the hearing. And she was like, yeah, if you were suffering. He's like, but my suffering, my disease is immortality. You don't understand what that means. So this is presented over and over again. The vampire in the newest Dracula movie, Dracula Untold. It's actually a pretty interesting movie, the first hour or so. There's that creature. The Dracula creature is doomed to immortality in the cave. It presents Dracula a little bit differently than the classic story. It's whoever played Tywin Lannister, that same actor, and he is just a doomed to the cave, immortally doomed to the cave, unless he can get somebody to willingly, freely take his place, and whatever the actor is takes his place. But it's a doomed immortality. Same. On this list, I mean, we're just going to get off this and wrap this video up, but we could do this all day long. This theme, I mean, there's hundreds of these themes. Bilbo Baggins, even if you want to stretch it a little bit, Bilbo Baggins presented in the first Lord of the Rings. That was about Frodo carrying the ring, but Bilbo, he finally gave the ring up and went off. But why he had the ring, the Gandalf or whatever says, you haven't aged a bit. He's holding that evil ring, and he's not aging. Eventually, he lets the evil behind and is going to go off to die. Okay, that's a more positive thing for Bilbo. The immortality associated with keeping the ring or the precious is evil. Portrait of Dorian Gray seems similar over and over again. Okay, over and over again. So in the Troy movie line from Brad Pitt saying in Troy is Achilles, they may be calling themselves gods and just noting potentially in the movie their envy of us. Their envy of me and you. We are Tommies. The Who's Tommies. We come in here, the deaf, dumb, and blind kid, but sure plays a mean pit ball. The deaf, dumb, and blind kid, you and I, we have no idea who we really are. They envy that situation because, we're timeless aspects. We're not always have been, always will be. Nobody dies and goes to the dirt like the atheist says, but they envy us because we don't know that. That's a beautiful thing potentially to them. On the flip side, if we knew with 100% certainty, 100% understanding of who we really were, and just not, Matt, we know who we are. We always will have doubts in this body, in this avatar. If we knew 100%, then life in this Brad Pitt sense would not be as beautiful as if doing something in the mortal life may in fact be the last time that we do it. Yes, know you are immortal, but I think one of the keys is to embrace your mortality and embrace that beauty that Achilles is talking about. If you went on a roller coaster and you knew 100% of the time, every single roller coaster in history has never had an accident or an incident, you would not nearly find it as interesting. Some of the sensations of going downhill or whatever, but knowing and hearing that there's been some accidents and some incidences makes it much more exhilarating. It's part of the experience. Just deep down sensing that, maybe there's a tiny little chance the atheists are right, and not knowing fully, with full confidence, who we almost surely are, that makes it interesting, doesn't it? So embrace that. Don't run from that side. One of the reasons that these menial tasks, like raking leaves the other day for me, one of the reasons that's so beautiful, where in the past, of course, it was just, oh no, got to rake the leaves, was because of everything that we've been through recently and now see. And we're realizing what we are and the possibilities of why all of a sudden in the last few years we can see these things that others can't. I'm beginning to feel like what has been described in some of our circles as an old soul. Been around a long time, kind of tired of it, ready to check out, ready to walk out of this game. An old soul was done this sort of existence or a physicality existence, whether it be here or somewhere else, or we've done it enough. And, you get the feeling just ain't coming back. You'd like to be able to see the mortal moments as more beautiful. Okay? Because we're not coming back. Okay? Not because we covet this and want to root and attach to this world, and we beg this world to bring us back so we can do it again and covet all the awards and all the ribbons that this world can put on our chest. That's what it wants. The mortal moments become more beautiful, potentially from an old soul perspective, not because we're going to die next week from Nibiru, but because potentially who knows how long we've done this. We've done it before, and we're not overall in this grand scheme of things not going to do it again. We've already made our choice that this is the last time, already walked out of this experience, made our intentions known. That way, if we've done this millions of times before, who knows? We don't have any of this information. But if we've gotten to ourselves in a state where we're ready to walk out of the game, raking those leaves, not that we're going to die next week, but raking those leaves is one of the last times we'll ever do it per all of existence. And it becomes about 1 million times more beautiful, raking those leaves. Where last year I was like, I got to rake the leaves. So if there is this Saturn moon matrix and all the YouTube videos we've seen and recycling traps and tricks and all the things we've paid attention to, have been interested in this truth pursuit, let's say it really exists. I don't know. But if it's here to get us to repeat the lifetime or whatever, but we're ready. We're walking out. We're not worried about it. I mean, I'm not worried about it. You might be still, but you shouldn't be if you get to a certain point in this pursuit of truth. I'm quite confident that these tricks, these pathetic tricks, that moon matrix would have to be associated with the same general trick that they're doing now with Biden and the minions. It's all would have to be related, right? I have zero chance. They have zero chance of this stupid trick after death, if it even exists, Saturn moon matrix recycling track. Zero chance of it working on most of us. Just as the people around us are fooled in this life, it's likely they will probably be fooled in death. They're fooled now in life. Why wouldn't they be fooled in death? If we're not fooled now in life, why would we be fooled at death? If David Icke wants to talk about Saturn moon matrix, I don't care. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it, whether it exists or not. Although I'm excited, absolutely excited about the wonders that await by graduating out of here, if you will, and getting a realization that this is the last time, and that is emotionally very moving, and it makes day-to-day tasks or the drudgery of life more beautiful if as an old soul you're realizing this is the last time. I'm excited about getting out, but, again, it's, on the other side, somebody from a different perspective would say, be careful what you wish for. You were bored out in the spiritual realm or whatever. You wanted to get into that shit show, or you're an aspect of all that ever was and all that ever will be that is experiencing itself without knowing, understanding that being Tommy, the deaf, dumb, and blind kid. Don't be careful what you wish for, because there's a scene in that Star Trek Janeway with the Qs, and the one Q wants to kill himself, and the other Q wants to prevent him from killing himself, and he's like, "Let me show you what the Q continuum, the immortal life, is really like." And they show up at this dusty old desert one road, like a gas station, the tumbleweeds blowing, and there's like two people just sitting around, just half asleep, and it's quiet. And she's like, "This is the Q continuum of immortals." And he's like, "No, this is an understanding or an aspect of it that you can understand. But basically what I'm showing you here," is, he said, this is how bored we are with existence. We've been immortal for, maybe 1 trillion years or whatever. He didn't put it into a time deadline, but he's basically like, we've done everything there is to do, and we've done it 1,000,000 times, all that there is to do. So, we're bored. And that's potentially, the situation we were in. So be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for. They could say something, yeah, you're ready to, as an old soul, ready to walk out. And at this point, I'm ready to walk out. I don't, all the creepy stuff here with a transhumanist degenerate, I want no part of it in this lifetime or the next. I mean, I don't want to come back. But just be careful. People say, be careful what you wish for. It's a very exciting experience when you come in as Tommy, the deaf, dumb, and blind kid, and don't know who you are. All right? Because it gets a little boring on the other side. Nevertheless, I still feel like an old soul when I went out. But that's something I'm going to at least think about. Make sure we're making the right decision. But either way, it will be up to us. Not because we're recycled back by some trick or whatever. All right? It's how you interpret the steroided up Brad Pitt as Achilles. Knowing each moment may be our last makes things more beautiful. Most interpret this just as a regular life and death. Any moment in this life may be our last. We might be attacked by Menelaus and Agamemnon, and it might be our last, and it makes it more beautiful. But perhaps it means something greater, what he's saying, that the end of all material art incarnations and the realization that there will be no more material incarnations, the true end of an age makes every aspect of mortality more beautiful. My other friend, Tony, the one that has seen the connection to his higher self, he tells me that a big part of all of this, if you want out, is really just having an understanding that you can decide to walk out of this dream at any time. You don't have to wait until death or ask the ether or beg something, or you just decide to walk out now, not wait for your death. It's probably too late. You have to wait for your death. That's probably the problem. The reality is set up, and in terms of the lies and tricks, Don Lemons would tell you have no ability or authority to make those decisions now. It tells you the opposite's true, then you probably do. You have to decide if you're leaving now. Once you do it, it seems there's a realization that comes that certain things will never happen again. And the emotion starts to pour forth in you as you realize this, that this is the last time you will be something or do something, at least in a material sense or in a 3D sense. Not because because the end of the world is coming for some truth videos, but because, because this is your last incarnation potentially of this type. Now, some of you may be saying that my notions, or what I've said many times, that time does not exist. Everything is laid down on top of each other, and the effects of retrocausalities, where the future affects the present or the present affects the past. Might say, well, Matt, maybe they are all real, or your notions about all that are correct. But your newfound attitude here, what you're presenting here, is a result of a reset or a major cataclysm that's close. And one aspect of yourself has already experienced it. See, it's already happened. And everything's so beautiful now. And you keep talking about putting yourself in the mental state where it's the last time you're going to rake leaves, and it's so beautiful, and you want to cry over raking leaves. Well, the cataclysm's already happened. It's retrocausality back at your ass, and you're feeling it now, and now you're all emotional that this will be the last time. I don't think so. All right, I don't think so. I don't think that's why I go out to water my plants the last day before the first frost, and I say goodbye to them. It almost brings me to tears. I don't think so. Oh yeah, your broke ass is dead, and the cataclysm came, the plasma event came. You dead, and you're feeling the retrocausality ripple back to that. So now everything, when you make a s'more or something over a fire, it becomes so beautiful you want to shed a tear. I don't think that's it. Okay, I really don't. And even if that is it, that's so incredibly wondrous. Even if that's it, it's so incredibly wondrous that we've already won anyway. That by itself, if something could happen like that, it disproves the atheist argument. So whatever. Either way, it's positive. It's possible, though. Whatever. If somebody's saying that to me, but I don't buy it as likely. I don't hide from this possibility out of fear. The end of the worlders on YouTube. There have been many in about 2,000 years or more, and they've all been wrong, like I said. If Nibiru comes in my Happy Meal tomorrow, I'll smile at it and know that this is exactly how things are supposed to play out here. So I have a spiritual journey, and I can improve myself. Nibiru comes chugging around the corner. I will know that's exactly what's supposed to happen. It's a bad example because I don't believe no Nibiru is coming in from deep space. I don't believe Matt Damon can ever land on anything called Mars. Nobody goes anywhere, in my opinion, but it really doesn't matter in terms of the general point that's being made here. The creeps and the creepy crypt keeper, who's flying the plane, all this is being managed too perfectly, like I've said, in my opinion, for some cataclysm to be coming right forth in the winter solstice, or we're all doomed. If some truthers know it with their YouTube channels, I think the creatures would know it. So why did they spend the last year managing everything so perfectly and planning it probably for 20 years? Because that's what it would take. The economy alone and how everything is still surviving is so perfectly managed, it's not human. They did all this just because we're all going to be blowed up or have some plasma event in a few weeks? No, I don't think so. They managed shit over a long, long period of time. If I've done this before, this incarnation, I've done it many, many times before, potentially. I don't know. But I sense, if I've done it before, I just sense, this is the end of that cycle for me. All right? I just sense that. And if it is the end of that cycle for me, it would produce a far greater emotional response, okay, than if just some event is going to happen, like grand solar minimum. Why is grand always attached to that? Everybody that talks about freezing and solar minimum, they always say grand. Well, that sounds just like parroting back to me. Why does it have to be grand? What's so grand about it? Why does that name always have to be part of it? We're going to freeze the earth, and we're going to, then that would just be the end of this tiny incarnation. That wouldn't be a big deal. What they going to do? End me young life? I mean, if you've got other incarnations on the material plane, then it's like Colin's speech. Like one of us is going to jump in Bandersnatch. One of us is going to jump. It doesn't mean shit. There's multiple aspects of you all over the place experiencing similar things. My friend Tony, who talks about sequential incarnations, and simultaneous, incarnations, aspects of higher self, he would probably agree with Colin's speech from Bandersnatch. I don't think a timeless entity would put so much stock into a single incarnation in one place for a little blink of 80 years or whatever. You know, it just doesn't fit with the type of emotion that is swelling up in me almost daily, and I'm sure many of you. There just seems to be something more grand at stake here. Like, no student ever shed a tear on the last day of school in like 7th grade. Many did upon high school graduation, knowing they wouldn't see certain people ever again. This is the end of the entire experience. Many cried, but what if a kid broke down and started crying because it was the end of 7th grade? I mean, throw the kid in a mental institution. Is this like, Matt, you're equating a lifetime with 7th grade? Yeah. If there are multiple incarnations on the material plane, then there's probably thousands, or Buddhists would say more than that. And so it just seems, here's what I'm saying. You know, what Gus is saying here, it's not about P, it's about monkey. What Gus is saying here, what Matt's saying here is, if we are an aspect of something that's always been, you know, like most of us get the sense of spiritual connection, then you think this is the only time we've ever done a material type existence? Just the only time out of trillions and trillions of years? We've probably done it a lot. You know, I don't know. But I think the emotion that comes forth in all of us is not from fear. It's a very positive thing in terms of things we're understanding about ourselves. So games like the come back every 10,000 years from the mist, experience one day of your life just to get you through the 10,000 years, every 1,000 years, things like that, just a way to learn and to tap into a certain mindset, or to, quote, see the beauty of certain things that consider like menial tasks or day-to-day drudgery, things that in the past were just completely trivial. If you realize you're an old soul and you've maybe already decided to walk out of this dream. You've already walked out of this dream, and at least this earthly place, you ain't never coming back. I mean, that is an amazing and wondrous experience. Okay, again, if you knew the true nature of who you were, coming into these realizations would not be a big deal. But we don't. We come in, Tommy, the deaf, dumb, and blind kid, and these sorts of insights, when they hit us, are a big deal. Like the Richie Rich kid who's always had $1 billion. He doesn't appreciate anything wealth can bring. You know, the kid that was born into it, the young teenage runaway who gets a telegram, finds out she's really a princess, and she's getting all these castles. And, you know, a bad example, I know, but she'll then appreciate the wealth. Bad example, but you know what I mean. You know, using money and rags to riches stories like this are potential through art and storytelling, potential. Again, here we go again. Truth drops. You know, you had the atheist perspective when you were, or the person these stories were in rags to riches, had the atheist perspective. That's what the rags represent. The system has always just reinforced in people that you're rags. Your entire life you will just be rags. And then you find out you actually have spiritual riches, or you are much more than, you know, what society has led you to believe. You're Scrooge the next morning after being put through those trials by the three spirits. That's the rags to riches, in this case, spiritual riches. When you agreed to come here into this place, whatever it is, you know, perhaps it really is, or was intended to be like an escape room game, this place, for aspects of creation, bored with itself, like the concepts we talked about and shared with the commenters under that tool videos. A aspect of creation creates something, sends it in to have a certain experience because it's bored with itself after hundreds of trillions of years or whatever. Of course, you can't put a time on it. But perhaps a wondrous experience, maybe if it's a little bit different than an escape room game that you agreed to come in here, perhaps a wondrous experience became, or was per the hijacking of these minions. This is always on the table, that although it looks like they are playing a role for our spiritual fulfillment and advancement, the hijacking will always be on the table because they make it worse and worse and worse. Look what's happening now, but perhaps that is part of what their role is. But it's like this reality maybe became the trash compactor from Star Wars, where they turned the dial all the way up to 10. And then we realized, that these bastards had hijacked it and it's a trash compactor. It's about to squeeze and we want to walk out. And no matter how many times we've done this before, we may sense as old souls, it's time to get out before being smushed. Maybe it is the roles of these minion bastards to play a certain role, but maybe they get out of control. And part of the escape room game is to realize when to get out, when to decide to just walk out of this dream or this game. And you're Princess Leia finding yourself in the trash compactor, and Luke's being sucked under the water by some tentacle, but note this, even after they got out and were so happy to be alive, even after they got out of that trash compactor, they were still inside the greater Death Star, just as Neo was still inside the Matrix after being rescued by Morpheus. Yup, he was still in the Matrix. The cold, dark rooms inside the Nebuchadnezzar and the tasty weed and the frayed sweaters was still almost 99% inside the Matrix. We'll talk about that again sometime. So just remember that the green room after death may still be part of this main, the green room may be part of the still main stage. It's going to convince you you're dead when you're not, and then you come right back, potentially. I'm going to make sure I'm really dead. and I'm not, I don't want to be speaking with Captain Janeway's Archon from that creepy episode of Star Trek Voyager. Potentially there's this middle area where, they convince you you're dead. Like Dumbledore comes out to talk to Harry Potter. What's the first thing Dumbledore said? Harry, you want to go back? That's what is presented to Harry Potter movie. Make sure you're dead. But whatever petty tricks that may exist in this area, there's no point in over-analysis of it or making all these preparations. If we in this group honestly don't know all we need to know, well, who does? Do they act like they have it all perfect and they're not always running around getting in our business? And if they had everybody on a leash, they wouldn't work so hard. So if anybody is going to figure this stuff out, it's going to be people that toys with these sort of ideas and engages in these sort of conversations, not your best friend that just can't wait for the NASCAR championship on Sunday and the Monday Night Football. And these people, they'll probably be tricked because they're tricked in life. So they'll be tricked after death. You're not tricked in life. So why would you expect to be tricked after death? It's probably that simple. In the never-ending story, little kid Atreyu, little warrior kid Atreyu, not the kid reading the book, to get through those gates, he just needed self-confidence and assurance to walk through the gates with no doubt whatsoever. And it's hard to have that level of self-confidence and assuredness in this life because the hijackers, the ones throwing us into the trash compactor, will do everything they can to break everybody's self-confidence down into learned helplessness and the state that they put everybody in. It's awfully difficult. That's why the concept of did they hijack and go too far is on the table. It just, is this whole reality intended so only just a tiny little sliver of a sliver of a sliver, 1% of 1% of 1%, which is us, see some of these things and everybody else is blind to it and everybody else gets screwed over? I don't know. For those reasons, it does seem hijacked. If everybody's yelling at the video, that's awfully arrogant. You and a few people listening to this are the only ones that have it figured out. I hear you. I don't have any other way to put it. The observations about reality that we all collectively have come up with, I think, are accurate. And I'm talking about the basic observations of reality. Even at the studying the screen level or what really happened on 9/11, things like that. So, anyway, the never-ending story. And even his confidence starts to break down. And because of that, they start firing off these little laser beams from their eyes. But he had enough confidence to get far enough through that he jumps through and succeeds, even though he almost gets his ass killed. But anyway, if we don't make it out of here, or enter the day of our life or the day of our death, which is the day of our life, enter with the perspective where we're in control. If we don't get this right, who is? Think about it. I think it was designed to be that hard. It can't be that hard. If we can't get it right and they're going to be able to trick us, again, who's going to get out? That checkout girl down at the local store, you know, where you can just see the look in her eyes that if she has to do one more shift, she's going to hang herself out back. Or your father-in-law who just sits around watching Fox News all day long, complaining about the damn Democrats. They're stealing the election. Damn Democrats. I mean, that guy going to get it right? I mean, you know, this guy's already he's threatened several times, these types of guys or girls, they're going to leave the country if Biden wins. I'm leaving the country. By the way, just as the main title logo that announces the movie Back to the Future, you clearly see F-U-C-K. Go look at the movie poster, Back to the Future, all on purpose. F-U-C-K is right there. Just as SpaceX pathetically embeds the word sex. You know, just a little note off the side here. I passed Levette would talk about symbols and how it hits your subconscious mind. And a lot of what you read, you think you're reading, but it actually is meant to bypass your thinking part of the brain, your frontal lobes, to go right to the subconscious. I passed a Biden-Harris poster, and my subconscious immediately communicated with my conscious, and I read, I don't, look, guys, to my thinking, this is exactly what it is. No, but I read, it said Biden-Harris. I read biohazard. It just hit me. It went biohazard. Well, what? Where did I get that from? Biden-Harris. Then there's those 3 lines through Biden. And I was just thinking what Levette would say. Levette, you know, I might, again, be completely wrong about, like, they plotted to put that in everybody's mind. But Levette would say, no, they will use symbols to communicate a message to your subconscious that you aren't even aware of course. So I certainly don't expect anybody listening to the sound of my voice that to say, oh, I also saw biohazard quickly when I went by a Biden-Harris sign. Anyway, just a note, and we'll just wrap this up. I wanted to mention that at some point. I'm just throwing it in now. So this may be why, you know, they can't just spell the words, you know, but they have to put all these, and in everything they do, they put lines and symbols and make things. They don't just put the words and the language or the letters themselves are spellcraft, but that's not good enough. They'll have to make something into a symbol, or how they'll put the Hillary poster was the Twin Towers. They can't just put, you know, it's not just good enough that the language and the letters are word magic in and of itself. They have to embed the symbolism. It's all there. Like Hillary Clinton's, you know, World Trade Center in her campaign poster. It's there for the subconscious, your subconscious, not for mockery or any other second grade explanation. You know, so just to wrap this up, we've had a warm spell here in the Northeast for a few days. And, you know, my hibiscus flower, beautiful yellow, 1 or 2 at a time all summer. Incredible. Lantana, white lantana flowers are still actually producing new flowers right now. It's incredible. Pretty amazing for this late date. You know, there's a reason I went back out there yesterday to water. I don't make it seem like they're as beautiful as they were in July. No, we've had a cold spell. They're beaten down. They're half dead. But it's just amazing they're still producing flowers. But there's a reason I went out there yesterday to water, again, these beaten down things. And to once again thank them for the beautiful flowers they produced this summer, which I've now done about 4 times. The emotions in me in doing this and 100 other things now pours out nowadays. And I bet many of you listening are shaking your heads going, yep, I'm the same way. I'm feeling the same exact things most of you are probably saying. Now, I assure you, this has nothing to do with watching too many truth videos about the fear of how they're going to kill us all or any sort of thing like that. I don't believe that's at all the case or any similar nonsense. You know, even if these events or whatever being predicted or prophesized is real, that's not the emotion it would pull forth in us. All right. This is what can only be described as a soul's understanding that this experience potentially ain't going to happen again. because we've already decided to exit the dream or exit the game. Not waiting for the day of our death, already decided it now. The emotion comes when we've already exited the dream. Thanks for listening.